Welcome back to How to Value a Business for Sale in 2022. In today's video, I'm going to be covering our second approach to valuation, being the market approach. Now, the market approach is, as mentioned, it's one of our three approaches to valuation that we use to value a range of assets, but in particular our privately held businesses at InteleK. Now, what is the market approach about, or what is the premise of the market approach? The market approach, which can be used to value businesses, but as mentioned, a range of assets, and is frequently used in particular to value housing, is under the premise that we have a transaction price for a similar asset, in our case, a similar business, and we use that observed transaction price in the market to come up with an estimate of value for our subject company. So let me give you an example. I've got my two whiteboards here. Let's say that this is hypothetically a business, but as mentioned, we can use the market approach to value any asset. In the case of my whiteboard here, let's say that for this whiteboard, I paid $100. Now, down below here, we can see I have another whiteboard. So I want to estimate what the value of this second whiteboard is, but I don't have an actual price for how much it is. So what I'm going to do under the market approach, I'm going to identify a range of things and basically assess how comparable these two assets are. So in the case of the whiteboard here, when I look at both of them, I'm going to assess a range of criteria. This one equally is white. Its age, I believe to be about the same. If it had a different age, it might be worth a different value. What's the most obvious difference here? Well, in the case of this one here, I think it might be about 60% of the size of the bigger one here. So in a very basic market comparison, if you will, under the market approach, if this one is worth 100, then I might go 0.6 times 100. So I might say the value of this one here under the market approach is approximately $60, when the bigger one, as observed in an actual transaction in the market, the value was $100. So that's the most basic concept or premise of the market approach, comparing to other like-for-like, apples for apples, where possible, transactions are observed in the market to value our subject business. Now, in terms of the calculations here, how does it normally work? Well, with the market approach, we often use a multiple on some measure of, again, earnings. Now, that measure of, or that multiple, can be applied to anything from revenue to measures after expenses and costs, such as EBIT or EBITDA. These are measures of, think of it as profitability after certain costs and expenses. So for example, it might be quite common that you'll see, say, if a business has a revenue of, say, $1 million, you might apply a multiple to that of 1. Now, the multiples depend on the industry in the business that we are valuing. There are a range of factors that can change these multiples. May it be growth prospects, risk, a range of other factors. But effectively, we get a measure of earnings and then we apply a multiple. Now, if you remember, when we are looking at any of our valuation approaches, within the approaches, we have a range of methods. So within the market approach, the two most common methods that we look at are effectively comparing business sales to transactions in public companies, and the second one being transactions in privately held companies. The beauty of public companies is, as we know, any company that is traded on a listed, and that's what I mean by public, publicly investable, or traded on a listed stock exchange, we can see the observed transactional prices, i.e. where shares in these public companies are trading. So when valuing a privately held company, we can look at these transaction prices in these listed or public exchanges, make adjustments for comparability with our subject company, and then value our privately held business using these prices. Equally, we can also find transaction prices for privately held businesses using a range of databases that we have access to at InteleK Business Valuations. That's a summary of the market approach. Obviously, as always, it comes down to the appraiser or the valuer's discretion in terms of which of these methodologies is most applicable and in the case of the market approach, applying the necessary adjustments when you have two businesses or a transaction used to value a subject company that is not exactly apples for apples or completely comparable. Look forward to seeing you in the next video about the asset approach.